Hey everyone. Before you dive in, please remember to hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and share this with your friends and family. Also, let me know where you're tuning in from. I'd love to hear. It was a crisp autumn morning when my phone rang. My daughter-in-law, let's call her Jessica, was excitedly detailing her packing plans for a family retreat. A retreat I wasn't invited to. I always considered myself a supportive mother-in-law, devoted to my son, let's call him Michael, and his spouse. But this time felt different. The space they'd previously allocated for me in their lives had inexplicably vanished. Jessica's call arrived early that day, her voice brimming with an almost unsettling cheerfulness as the phone buzzed against my ear. Hi, just wanted to let you know we're heading to the coast for a long weekend. We've got everything organized, she declared. No invitation, no subtle suggestion of my possible inclusion. This getaway was solely for them, and she made certain I understood that. Oh, fantastic. Have a wonderful time, I responded, maintaining a light tone. My voice sounded perfectly fine, but inwardly, a deep sense of disappointment stirred. The rest of the day was spent in a carefully constructed facade of unconcern. Yet, every time my gaze fell upon the unoccupied guest room, with its freshly laundered bedding and dust-laden picture frames, a persistent ache intensified. This wasn't merely about the trip itself, it transcended my exclusion from the weekend. It was a stark realization of the altered dynamics within our family. Once a central figure in their household, a helping hand, a source of unwavering support, I now felt like a mere afterthought. I prepared lunch, yet my appetite had disappeared. Jessica's words, "We've got everything organized," replayed incessantly in my mind. The casualness, the simplicity, suggested a complete lack of consideration for extending an invitation. Perhaps she genuinely hadn't considered it necessary. Perhaps she saw no reason to include me. As evening descended and I sat at the kitchen table, I could no longer ignore the gnawing truth. I wasn't merely excluded from their trip. I had been systematically excluded from their lives. I felt unseen, a mere shadow, lingering in their periphery as they moved forward, leaving me behind. Then, a powerful realization dawned. If they weren't creating space for me, I would create my own. I refused to passively watch them build their lives without me. I was finished being the forgotten one. I needed to assert myself, to demonstrate that I wasn't a mere pawn to be discarded at their convenience. But I wouldn't react impulsively. I needed time to strategize, to plan carefully. No rash decision. But when the next call arrived, Jessica requesting my assistance with their pet hamster while they were away, it took immense self-control to refrain from an outburst. Instead, I simply said, "Certainly, I'll look after him." But a profound shift occurred within me. Something deep inside had irrevocably changed. The following morning, I resumed my usual routine, attempting to keep myself occupied, cleaning, cooking, and engaging in various small tasks around the house. But a profound emptiness remained. It wasn't just the physical absence of Jessica and Michael. It was the absence of the recognition I once enjoyed within their lives. "Could you keep an eye on Chester? He needs feeding and a short walk." "Thanks." I read the message twice before sending a curt, "Sure, no problem." Something within me, however, was stirring. I had always cared for Chester, even without being specifically asked. But now, this seemed to be the only aspect of my existence that they remembered. My pet-sitting abilities. They hadn't even bothered to inquire about my willingness to join them. It felt as though my entire value in their world had been reduced to that of a mere pet-sitter. I went to Chester's cage, stroking his soft fur as he gazed up at me, his small eyes trusting and loyal. If only he could speak, I thought with a bitter twist, he might understand my feelings. But then again, perhaps not. He loved me unconditionally. I envied that unwavering affection. But this wasn't simply about the hamster. It wasn't even about the weekend trip. It was about respect. The blatant disregard for my presence within their family gnawed at me. As the day progressed, anger simmered, though I carefully concealed it. I would approach this strategically. By the time evening arrived, and Jessica and Michael were enjoying their coastal escape, I sat staring at my phone. Earlier that morning, I'd reviewed my bank account, and a plan solidified in my mind. I was no longer the woman who spent her days waiting for their approval. I opened my banking app and froze their credit cards. Every single one. If they chose to exclude me and treat me as if I were invisible, they would feel the consequences. Let them manage without the convenience of my financial support. The moment I confirmed the action, a surge of empowerment coursed through me. It wasn't a dramatic gesture, but it felt profoundly significant. For the first time in a long while, I felt in control. And this was merely the beginning. I leaned back in my chair, contemplating the phone in my hand. Perhaps they would notice. Perhaps they wouldn't. Either way, it no longer mattered. I refused to be defined as just a pet sitter, as just the one who had been sidelined. I was a person deserving of respect, and I would ensure they remembered that. The next few days unfolded in an unsettling, uncomfortable silence. I continued my routine, caring for Chester, preparing meals for myself, and maintaining the household. Yet, my thoughts frequently returned to my actions. Freezing their credit cards hadn't been a knee-jerk reaction. It was a conscious decision, a decision to remind them of my presence. However, I couldn't shake the feeling of crossing an invisible boundary. Was I being petty, or had I finally done something I should have done long ago, standing up for myself? Why did you freeze the cards? We can't even buy groceries without them. You're making things difficult for everyone. I stared at the message, absorbing her words, the urge to unleash my pent-up frustration, to describe the pain of being sidelined and excluded from their perfect family getaway, was intense. But I resisted. I took a deep breath, placed the phone on the counter, and stepped outside. The crisp air revived me. I walked toward the garden, my fingers brushing against the azaleas I had planted years ago. They were still there, growing steadily. Much like myself, I realized. I had spent so long prioritizing everyone else's needs, neglecting my own. The truth was, Jessica wasn't the only one feeling frustrated. I was furious at myself for allowing this situation, at Michael for his silence, and most of all, at the situation itself. This wasn't just about a weekend trip. It represented years of neglect, years of enduring the role of an afterthought. Returning to the house, Jessica's message remained on the screen. Finally, I typed, "Perhaps it's time you learn to manage without relying on me." I hit send before second-guessing myself. The phone rang almost immediately. It was Michael. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but something compelled me to answer. "Mom, why are you doing this?" Michael's voice was strained with frustration. "You're making a scene over nothing. It's just a trip. Do you realize how much I've done for both of you? How many times I've stepped in when you needed me? But it's never enough, is it? You don't even notice me anymore," I responded, my voice slightly trembling. A long pause ensued. Then Michael sighed. "Mom, we didn't mean to make you feel this way, but you can't just freeze everything and act like we owe you something." "I don't need anything from you, Michael," I said, my voice regaining its composure. "But perhaps it's time you understood that I deserve something too. Respect, acknowledgement. It's not an excessive request." Silence returned. A sense of clarity, previously unknown, washed over me. This wasn't about the trip. It was about them finally seeing me for who I am. Not a housekeeper, not a caretaker, but a person deserving of respect. "Goodbye, Michael," I whispered before ending the call. As I settled at the kitchen table, a mix of satisfaction and uncertainty lingered. The ramifications of my actions were already unfolding, and I had no idea how they would respond. But I was finished waiting to be noticed. I had drawn a line in the sand. Now, it was time to see if they would cross it. The phone calls persisted. Michael attempted to reach me repeatedly that evening, but I ignored each attempt. I had made my point, and I wouldn't be pushed into a corner again. Then, the inevitable occurred. A knock on the door the next afternoon jolted me from my thoughts. I wasn't expecting any visitors. Cautiously, I peered through the peephole, revealing Jessica, arms crossed, her expression a blend of frustration and concern. I took a deep breath before opening the door. "I need to talk to you," she said, her tone colder than I had ever heard it. Without waiting for an invitation, she entered the living room. "What's the deal with freezing the cards?" I closed the door behind her and followed her into the living room, where she stood with her hands on her hips, eyes narrowed. The tension was palpable. "Jessica, I don't need this right now," I said, trying to remain calm. She scoffed, her tone sharp and condescending. "No, I don't think you understand, Mom. You're making everyone uncomfortable. Michael's panicking. We can't afford anything. And you're sitting here playing the martyr." I bristled at her words. "You think this is about money? This is about respect. This is about the years I've spent serving you both without so much as a thank you." She flinched but quickly recovered her composure. "Oh, please, you're just upset you weren't included. It's not like we planned this to hurt you." I stood my ground. "Then why weren't you asked? Why was I the last to know? Why am I only good enough to care for Chester while you enjoy yourselves?" Jessica's eyes narrowed. "Because we didn't think you'd want to come. You never go on trips. You're always too busy playing the victim to enjoy life." I let out a bitter laugh. "I'm not playing the victim, Jessica. I'm tired of being invisible. Tired of being treated as inconsequential. You think I want to remain in the background while everyone else lives their lives?" Her expression wavered, revealing a fleeting moment of guilt, quickly replaced by an icy stare. "I don't have time for this," she said coldly. "I don't understand why you're making things so complicated. We're family, and you need to stop making everything about you." "Family, is that what you call it?" I retorted. I've been there for you both, and the moment you no longer need me, I'm discarded. Jessica took a step back, her face softening momentarily. Look, I didn't intend for this to happen, but maybe you should consider the bigger picture. We all have our lives to live. Her words struck me harder than expected. I stood there, heart racing, trying to process her words. My mind raced back to the years I'd poured into their lives, all for nothing. I had been invisible, a convenience, a utility. Finally, I spoke, my voice low but firm. If you truly want to fix this, understand something, Jessica. I'm not going to be your emotional punching bag anymore. You need to realize, I'm not a maid or a pet sitter. I'm a person. She didn't respond, turning and heading for the door. But before reaching the handle, she paused. Fine, if you're going to act like this, then I guess you don't need us either, she said, her voice tight with anger. I don't need you to need me, Jessica. I simply need you to respect me. With that, she left, leaving me feeling both lighter and heavier, simultaneously. The confrontation left me shaken, but a significant shift had occurred. I was no longer a mere placeholder in their lives. I had made my decision, and there was no turning back. The silence after her departure was deafening. For the first time in a long while, the house felt truly empty. I sank into an armchair by the window, observing the rustling leaves, my mind racing. I'd said what needed saying, but the weight of it remained heavy on my chest. Hours later, my phone's chime broke the stillness. A message from Michael. I could almost feel his frustration. Mom, you've gone too far. We need to talk about the cards. You're pushing things to the limit. This isn't like you. I stared at the text, the words cutting deeply, but this time, I resisted the urge to reply immediately. I took a deep breath and set down my phone. I didn't need to explain myself to him, not anymore. For years I had held the family together, fixing everything that broke, but now, I realized it was time to stop fixing and start living for myself. If they couldn't see that, then perhaps it was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. Just as I was about to silence my phone, another message arrived, this time from Jessica. Mom, please, Michael and I are upset. We don't understand why you're doing this. Can't you just give us a break? This is too much. We just want peace. The plea was genuine. I could sense the desperation, but I had reached my limit. Peace for whom? For me? Or was it a request for me to retreat back into the background and remain silent? I sat up straighter, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I had to respond, but this time, I wouldn't sugarcoat anything. Peace, I typed decisively. You want peace? I've been silent for too long, Jessica. I've sacrificed everything to maintain peace, but no more. I'm finished allowing you to walk all over me. I deserve more than that. You no longer have the right to utilize me. I paused, rereading the message. It wasn't angry, but it was firm, and it was final. I hit send, my heart pounding. Within minutes, my phone rang. It was Michael again. I let it ring, then it buzzed again, and again. The third call was from Jessica. I stared at the screen, before silencing the phone. I had anticipated the fallout, but now that it was happening, I was surprisingly calm. I wasn't worried anymore. I hadn't done anything wrong. They had. They were the ones who had forgotten who I was, and now they would have to deal with the consequences. An hour later, the doorbell rang. I wasn't surprised to see Michael on the doorstep, his face drawn with frustration. His jaw was clenched, and his eyes held a fire I'd never seen before. Mom, we need to talk, he said, before I could speak. His tone was sharp, but less accusatory than before. I stepped aside, letting him in. He entered the living room, running a hand through his hair. Why are you doing this? He asked again, but this time, the edge to his voice was different. It wasn't anger, it was confusion, hurt. You've never been like this. I folded my arms, leaning against the couch. David, I've been like this for years. You just never noticed. He looked at me, and for a moment I saw something unexpected in his eyes. Regret, perhaps even guilt. I don't know what happened, he admitted, his voice softening. We've been so preoccupied. I never considered how you might feel. Well, I've been thinking about how I feel for a long time, I replied, my voice steady. I've spent my life putting everyone else first, but not anymore. He looked down, his shoulders slumping. So, what now? Are you done with us? I'm not done with you, Michael, I said, my voice gentle, but I'm done being invisible, done being pushed aside. If you want a relationship with me, it's going to take more than just a sorry. I need respect. I need to feel like I matter. He didn't immediately respond, staring at the floor, absorbing my words. After a long pause, He looked up. I don't know if I can change everything overnight, he said quietly, but I'm willing to try. For the first time in a long while, a glimmer of hope flickered within me. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen instantly, but it was a start. The days following Michael's visit passed slowly, each marked by subtle shifts in the atmosphere. There were no more calls from Jessica, no more messages from Michael. It felt as though they were waiting for me to make the next move, to crawl back into their lives. But I wouldn't. I wouldn't allow myself to be drawn back into a pattern of silence and submission. I focused on myself, on my needs and desires. I took long morning walks, something I hadn't done in years. I resumed reading books I had neglected, and I even started cooking for the pure pleasure of it, not out of obligation. It felt liberating to rediscover myself, something I had lost along the way. Then, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, while enjoying tea at the kitchen table, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I had no intention of answering Jessica or Michael's calls. Therefore, I was surprised to see Michael's aunt, let's call her Evelyn, standing at the door, a hesitant expression on her face. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, her eyes scanning my home, as if unsure of her welcome. I hesitated. Evelyn wasn't like Jessica. She was kind, thoughtful, and always attempted to maintain family harmony. I liked her, but I wasn't certain of the purpose of her visit. Was she here to guilt me into forgiveness, or to criticize my actions? I stepped aside, inviting her in. "What's going on, Evelyn?" She entered, examining the room as if seeing it for the first time. I had spent the past few days organizing, clearing clutter, making the space feel more like my own. It was a subtle declaration of my newfound independence, and I wondered how Evelyn would react. "First, I want to say I understand why you did what you did," she began, sitting across from me. "You've always been there for all of us. For Michael, for Jessica. But somewhere along the way, I think we all took you for granted, especially Jessica." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't anticipated her words. Evelyn was the last person I expected to speak up, but hearing her words filled me with a mix of relief and disbelief. It was the first time anyone in the family had acknowledged the pain I'd silently carried for years. "I'm not here to excuse their behavior," Evelyn continued, her voice soft but firm. "I know Jessica can be difficult. But I want you to know this wasn't your fault. She's so focused on her own life, her career, that she's lost sight of what truly matters." I nodded, my fingers curling around my mug. "But it's more than that, Evelyn. It's how they treat me as though I don't exist unless they need something." Evelyn sighed, her gaze softening. "I understand, and I'm sorry for what you've endured. You shouldn't feel this way, but you're not alone. You're not invisible." Those words hung in the air. For so long I had felt invisible to my own family. I had given everything, and received nothing in return. But here was Evelyn, offering a validation I had longed for. It was unexpected, but precisely what I needed. "I'm not saying everything will change overnight," Evelyn added, her voice laced with sympathy. "But I think you've taken the first step. You've shown them you won't tolerate this treatment anymore." I exhaled slowly, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. For the first time in a long while, I felt understood. "I just don't know where to go from here," I admitted, my voice a whisper. "You go forward," Evelyn said, her eyes meeting mine with quiet strength. "You live your life for yourself now. The rest, well, they'll figure it out, but you can't keep living for everyone else. You deserve more than that." Her words resonated deeply. For so long I had placed my needs last, always prioritizing others. But Evelyn was right. It was time to stop seeking validation from a family incapable of seeing my worth. "Thank you, Evelyn," I said, my voice thick with emotion. I truly needed to hear those words. She smiled gently, placing a hand on mine. "You're welcome, and if you ever need someone to talk to, you know where to find me." As she left, I watched her go, feeling lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. For the first time, I could envision a future beyond the role I'd always played in their lives. Perhaps it was time to step into that future, however uncertain it felt. A few days after Evelyn's visit, something within me had changed. Her words, though simple, had settled deeply. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't merely a caretaker, a shadow in my own family. I was a person with desires, needs, and a life of my own. For so long, I had placed my family at the center, fading into the background, constantly prioritizing others. But now, for the first time, I was choosing myself. One evening, while enjoying tea, I reflected on the events. The confrontation with Jessica, Michael's subdued apology, and Evelyn's support. Even as a flicker of hope emerged, the familiar doubt crept in. Had I made a mistake? Just as I began questioning my decisions, my phone buzzed. A new message, It was from Michael. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready for another round of family guilt, but curiosity won, and I opened it. Mom, I've been thinking about what you said. I'm sorry for how I've treated you. We've all been selfish. Jessica's been caught up in her own world, but that's no excuse for neglecting you. I know this is difficult, but I want to make things right. Can we talk? Please. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. It wasn't the apology I'd hoped for, not even close to what I needed, but it was something, a crack in the wall they had built around me. Yet, I felt no rush to forgive. I took a deep breath and typed back slowly. Michael, I'm glad you're reflecting on this, but I can't simply forget everything that's happened. You and Jessica need to realize, I've spent years being your emotional support, your helper, but it's never been enough. I'm not your maid, and I'm not your backup plan anymore. I paused, my fingers hovering over the screen. It felt good to be firm, to finally speak my truth. I added, I need you to understand that I won't return to what we had, not unless things change. I sent the message and leaned back, the words feeling final. I wasn't angry, but I was resolute. I wouldn't be dragged back into their world of neglect and one-sided relationship. The silence that followed was deafening. I expected relief, but instead, felt unease. Would they truly change, or was I fooling myself? The next day, another knock came at the door. I wasn't surprised. Michael had called earlier to say he was coming, but this time, I wasn't sure what to expect. My heart raced as I opened the door to find him, holding a bouquet of flowers. His expression was sincere, but weariness showed in his eyes. Mom, I'm sorry for everything, he said quietly, his voice unsteady. We've been selfish. I don't expect you to forgive us immediately, but I want you to know I'm willing to make amends. I looked at him, taking in the flowers. It was a gesture, but felt hollow. I had been waiting for real change, for more than words. He could apologize all he wanted, but actions spoke louder. I appreciate the flowers, Michael, I said, my voice calm, but firm. But it will take more than that. I can't simply return to who I was. I've changed. And I need you both to understand this isn't just about a trip or hurt feelings. It's about respect. You need to show me you value me, not just when convenient. His shoulders slumped, frustration, perhaps defeat, evident. I know, Mom. I know, but I'm asking for a chance. A real chance to show you we can change. I studied him, the weight of his words sinking in. He was trying. I'll give you a chance, Michael, I said, but I need to see the effort. This isn't just about your forgiveness. It's about us building a new relationship, one where I'm not the one holding everything together. He nodded, hope in his eyes. Thank you, Mom. We can do this. I know we can. As I watched him leave, relief mingled with apprehension. It was a step forward, but not the end. It was the beginning of what promised to be a long journey. Could they truly change, or would they revert to old habits? Only time would tell, but I was prepared. I had drawn my line, and I wouldn't let it be crossed again. The following weeks felt like a delicate balancing act. Michael kept his word, calling more often, checking in, genuinely interested in my life. But Jessica, she hadn't reached out. I didn't expect her to, not immediately. She avoided confrontation, ran from discomfort. But it wasn't just her silence. It was the realization that she didn't fully grasp the depth of what had happened. To her, I was still the one who cleaned up when convenient. I knew Michael was trying, but he couldn't fix everything. He had his own life, and I couldn't burden him with the family's dysfunction. I needed more than words. I needed actions. I needed to see their willingness to alter the dynamics that had kept me in the background. One evening, I received another unexpected call from Evelyn. She was more hesitant, unsure of her involvement in family matters. But when she spoke, it was clear she had something important to say. Amanda, I know things are tense, but I think it's time for a family meeting. Just the four of us. Michael, Jessica, you and me, Evelyn said. Her voice was calm, but urgency underlay her words. I think it's time Jessica realizes what this has cost you. I sat there, processing her suggestion. A family meeting. It sounded like a good idea. But the thought of being in a room with Jessica again, knowing everything that had transpired, filled me with anxiety and determination. I don't know if I'm ready, I admitted. I don't know if Jessica is ready to hear what I have to say. Evelyn was quiet. I understand, but I think it's time she realizes she can't treat you like this anymore. You've been the backbone of this family, Amanda. They need to see that. Her words hit me hard. She was right. I had been the backbone, silently supporting them while they took me for granted. And now, it was time to say, enough. The next week, Evelyn arranged the meeting. It wasn't easy. Jessica was reluctant. but eventually agreed. We gathered at Evelyn's house one Sunday afternoon, the tension palpable. I had prepared mentally, but nothing could have prepared me for the rawness of the moment. We sat in the living room, the silence almost unbearable. Michael broke it. "Mom," he began, his voice low, "I know I messed up. I know this won't be easy, but I want to make it right. I want you to be part of our lives again." I looked at him, seeing sincerity. But it wasn't just about him. It was about Jessica. She avoided eye contact, shifting uncomfortably. She wasn't ready to confront her actions. I took a deep breath and turned to Jessica. "You've treated me like I didn't matter, like my feelings didn't count. I've picked up the pieces whenever you needed me. But where were you when I needed you?" She flinched, but didn't speak immediately. Defensiveness was evident in her posture. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Jessica finally said, her voice quieter than usual. I guess I got caught up in everything. I didn't realize what I was doing." "Caught up?" I asked, the words sharper than intended. "You were so caught up in your own life, your own world, that you forgot I'm part of this family too. I've been here for years, supporting you both, but you've never made space for me. I've had enough." The room was silent. Evelyn spoke next, her voice calm but firm. "Jessica, I know you didn't intend to hurt Amanda, but you need to understand the impact this has had on her. You can't act like everything is fine when it isn't. She deserves better." Jessica looked down, her face flushed with guilt. "And that's the problem," I said, my voice steady. "You never considered how I felt. You were so focused on yourself that you didn't see what I was going through, and I can't let that slide anymore." It was the first time in years I'd spoken so plainly about my feelings. As the words left my mouth, a weight lifted. I wasn't just speaking for myself. I was speaking for everyone who had been silenced for too long. Jessica's face softened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw understanding in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll do better, I promise." The words were simple, but enough. It wasn't a complete resolution, but a step forward. We wouldn't fix everything overnight, but we had begun to tear down the walls between us. And for the first time in a long while, I could breathe. The family meeting was a turning point. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. I could feel something shifting, tentative, fragile, but real. For the first time, there was hope for change. Over the following weeks, the dynamic between Jessica, Michael, and me began to slowly change. Jessica made more of an effort. She called, checked in, even invited me to dinner. It wasn't grand, but a start. Michael seemed more present, more aware of my place in their lives. He made time for just the two of us, a reminder that we were still family, in some sense. But the biggest change was in me. For years, I had waited for them to see me, to recognize my worth. I had focused on fixing their problems, losing sight of my own. But now, I was reclaiming my life. I was learning to say no, to prioritize myself. It wasn't always easy, but necessary. Then, one evening, something unexpected happened. A message from Jessica. It wasn't an apology or a request for forgiveness. It was an invitation. "Mom," the text read, "I've been thinking. I know things haven't been easy, but I want you to come with us to the lake house this weekend. I want us to start over. Just family. No expectations, just us." I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of emotions. I hadn't expected this, but there it was, a genuine attempt at reconciliation. Jessica had taken the first real step, and it was up to me to accept it. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I typed, "I'll come, but let's make this about all of us. Let's start fresh. No more ignoring what matters." I hit send and waited. The response was immediate. "I'm glad, Mom. This means a lot. We can do this together." That weekend, I found myself driving to the lake house, a place that once symbolized family togetherness before everything fell apart. I felt the weight of the past, but also a strange sense of peace. This wouldn't be a quick fix, but a start. When I arrived, Jessica and Michael greeted me warmly. There was no awkwardness, no forced smiles, just genuine relief that we were all there, trying to heal. We spent the weekend together, cooking, playing games, talking like we hadn't in years. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As I sat on the porch that Sunday evening, watching the sunset, I realized something. This wasn't just about forgiving them. It was about forgiving myself. I had blamed myself for the distance, for how things turned out, but now, I knew healing didn't just mean reconciling with them. It meant letting go of the resentment and guilt I'd carried for so long, and for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Driving home, the weight of the past was gone. I felt lighter. I had learned something valuable, that I could be part of their lives without losing myself. I could be loved, respected, and cherished without being anyone's doormat. Life wasn't perfect, and our family wasn't perfect. But we were trying, and that, for me, was enough. Months passed, and things continued to improve. It wasn't always smooth. Tension and old habits threatened to resurface. But every time we faced challenges, we faced them together. And that, I realized, was what truly mattered. I spent more time doing things for myself, pursuing old hobbies, taking trips I'd dreamed of, and learning to set boundaries without guilt. I had spent years focused on everyone else's happiness, neglecting my own, but no longer. My happiness mattered as much as anyone else's. And with Jessica and Michael, we found a new rhythm, ups and downs, but we were building something stronger, based on mutual respect, understanding, and love. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I had finally found my place, not as a caretaker, not as someone overlooked, but as someone worthy of love, respect, and happiness. And that, I realized, was the most important thing of all.